Hello and welcome to Wine, Women, and Chocolate Podcast. I'm Kat Curry-Williams.
And I'm Radin, and with us today is Madelyn Alfano. Welcome, Madelyn.
Thank you for having me, ladies.
So you are a civic leader. You were very prominent during the pandemic with the California Restaurant Association.
Yes.
And you are mother of 3 children. And what many people probably don't know is that you are the face behind Maria's Italian Kitchen. How many are there right now?
We have 8 Maria's Italian Kitchens.
8 of them, and they are just a favorite in every town and city that they're in across Southern California. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So I think we need to start at the beginning because It was 1985 when you opened your first one. Can you give us a little bit of the history behind the restaurant?
Yeah, so the face, if you look at the logo of Maria's, is my mother's, actually her face when she was 18 years old. She was entrepreneurial as well. So the first Maria's Italian Kitchen was built out of the garage of our Village Mart grocery store in Brentwood on Barrington and Sunset. And that restaurant is still there. That was opened in 1972. So we're celebrating our 50th year this year.
That was the first restaurant that I have ever eaten, and it's a Maria's Italian Kitchen. Yeah. Many times I've eaten.
It's really a takeout. So there's a takeout window, and you'd go up, order your food at the window, and sit down. And it was long before this fast, casual, buzz. My mother and father were really pioneers and trailblazers. So they converted that one-car garage into the first Maria's Kitchen. In 1984, they sold that original one, but we maintained the rights and the name Maria's Italian Kitchen. I had a little international deli across the street with charcuterie and cheeses, and we were always a little bit ahead of what that
Brentwood across the street.
Right.
I used to drive from Hollywood in 1978, so that's why I do know. And I used to, that's the only place you'd have to go for from Brooklyn.
That's
for real good Italian food. You'd
cold cuts and
all the way to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And so one day, a woman came into my little deli and said, "Someone said you would help me." And I'm like, "Okay, I don't even know who you are." She goes, "But I have this failing. I have someone who's renting my space in Sherman Oaks, and I don't think he knows what he's doing. Would you go help him?" I said, "Okay, Sherman Oaks. Where's Sherman Oaks?" And I had no idea. It's over Mulholland. We don't go past Mulholland.
Go to the valley.
So I got in my little Carmen Ghia on I don't remember what day it was, and I'm driving, and there wasn't as much traffic then, so I got there relatively quickly, and I pulled up in front of where the Sherman Oaks Maria's is now, and painted on
Ventura Boulevard near Dixie Canyon.
That's
I know
between Dixie Canyon and Fulton, and on the window.
There on Friday.
There on Saturday.
It was painted Joe Mama's. So Joe Mama. So that was the name of us, Joe Mama's. And I walked in, it was completely empty space, and I said to this young kid who owned it, "What are you trying to do here?" She's like, "Well, I want to have a little deli, but I said, "Well, yeah, I don't think it's going to work out for you because you have no food here." And so I ended up taking.
And where's your mama? Because she's going to have to save you.
My mama would not be happy with that, Joe Mama. Anyway, so then I thought about it on my drive back. I was living in Culver City at the time, and I thought, they don't have little trattorias. My mom and dad were having postpartum depression after selling their life,
their baby.
And so we opened the first Maria's Italian Kitchen sit down. I opened it with my savings of $20,000, and I did a press and stick floor, and I painted. And I bought shelving from garage sales, and we put the groceries up there, and no one would give me credit.
I'm going to have to reel this back in a little bit, because I need to go, as I do, to the beginning, because before the deli and your mom, so there's a little bit of history there. Where did you even decide? No one rolls out of bed in the morning and goes "You know what, I think I'm going to open a restaurant." And
that's a good question. Yeah, I never wanted to be in the restaurant business. I went to UCLA, my alma mater, and I wanted to be a doctor, a pediatrician. So I was pre-med, and I would help my parents in the grocery store. And it's when you're with, I love people. I'm very passionate about getting to know people and being around people. And I just fell in love with, when I graduated from college, I was the only one in my entire family to go to a university. So as a thank you, I said to my parents that I would work with them in what they called the takeout, the little Maria's Italian kitchen, and just fell in love with it and put in systems. You know, my dad and my mother were very good at marketing, but they didn't have the systems. You know, they did everything because...
Were they disappointed that you weren't going to be the doctor that they were planning?
No, my mother always said, if everyone goes to college, who's going to clean the fish? So you need people not to all be doctors and lawyers. Somebody's got to actually come in and cook the food, grow the food, and take care of people. So,
absolutely, but that's some pivot.
Kind of fell. It was a total pivot.
Yeah, and so... At what age about was that Sherman Oaks Joe Mama story? I'm going to go back there, but I just like to go. I'm like, I'm missing the piece here.
Yeah.
So
Graduated UCLA 21, so 22. Then as I was working in my parents' the takeout, they had sold their grocery store to someone who did not know how to run a meat department. So he had asked my mother if she knew someone that could come in and run the meat department. And she said, of course, Madelyn could do it. So I was voluntold to run this meat department.
I love that word.
I love it.
And then I thought, okay, we had a meat department when I was, 12, 13, 14. We had butchers. So I thought, okay, what are you going to do when you don't know something? You find an expert to teach you or to help you or mentor you. And I always recommend that, a consultant, if you would, today.
Yes.
And I went down to the meat store on Pico Boulevard, was called Golden West Meats. And I walked in there and I saw these people running. I said, this young woman, a lot of energy. I said, she goes, can I help you? I said, well, I need someone to come help me set up my meat department. Every day I will pay you to do that and teach me how to do that. Well, it turned out there was a whole family of Alice and her brother George, and they would then come up after they finished working. They would come up in the evening and show me how to set up the meat department. And I learned how to break beef and cut and bone a chicken. And then this is in 1979, 80. Before the sushi craze, I hired the sushi chef from Yamashiro Gardens, and we made sushi.
Really?
Then I went to, used to be called the Irvine Ranch Market.
Oh, yeah.
I talked to the cheesemonger there, and I says, I want some cheeses. So I learned from him about the cheeses to have. And we had rotisserie chicken. So we had all of these foods
in the case, in the deli case.
So we had a hot case, we had the meats, the fish, the chicken. And so I had about 24 feet of if you went into like a Whole Foods thing, it was that.
So you're the pioneer. You set that stage for...
I learned from my parents, but I also really appreciated so much that was out there that we didn't have at that time. So that was in the 80s.
How did it transform into more of the, or did it, did you always have the basic Italian pastas and that sort of thing?
Right.
What happened was after 2 years of me running that meat department, the owner of the market figured he can hire someone to come in and do that. So he didn't renew I had a sublease, and so I had to look for a space. And there was a market or a little restaurant across the street called the Pasta Maker. And the owner of it was an investor, and he said, would you take over my space? And I said, I have no money. He said, I'll give you the key as long as you buy from me. He was in the fish business. And I said, I promise I will buy my fish from you. And I bought my fish from him for 40 years until he sold his business. So I then moved my international deli across the way. And that's when I was approached by this woman to take over her lease in Sherman Oaks in 1985. So I was 28 years old in 1985.
Wow.
In October.
And you took over.
I'm still 28 years old.
And that's the first restaurant. Here, let's toast to that.
28 years old.
28, all right.
Wow, at 28 years old. This is an amazing beginning. Amazing.
While
I know you for many years, and I did not know that story, that you were going to become a physician, like a pediatrician. It's so interesting, asking the questions that unfold something else that you never had an idea.
Well, you go from hospitals to hospitality, so we're still taking care of people.
There you go.
Well, I wanted to just bring up, even though we're jumping ahead a little bit, because we just toasted, these are your wines.
That's right.
And I think that a lot of your customers don't know that you have a private label.
We do.
Because I've been coming to your restaurant for over a decade, and I had no idea that you had a private label.
And
can you tell us a little bit about that before we jump back in time?
We're going to go back and forward.
So
I'm drinking the Chardonnay.
I'm drinking the Chardonnay, but I also have some Merlot at the ready.
So I decided to call it Beach Blonde Chardonnay. Originally, the label we had was this picture of my mother sitting on Keensburg, on the beach in Keensburg, New Jersey, where they would go from Hoboken. And so I call this Beach Blonde Chardonnay. It's really nice. It's very drinkable, easy to drink. You can have more than one glass and not think you're having too much. It goes great with chicken piccata. Famous chopped salad,
which is our favorite. Mine and my son's favorite is the chicken piccata.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, we make a pizza that's people don't realize how amazing, delicious. The one I take home is our pizza Bianchi, which is a pizza with just mozzarella cheese, and we take the fresh spinach sautéed with oil and garlic on the top. It's great as an appetizer. So
and you make it gluten-free too, if you wish.
We have gluten-free. We have a cauliflower crust. We have vegan cheese.
Oh my God.
We have vegan sauce. Our soups are vegan.
Wow, so you
except for the chicken soup, that's not vegan. But the minestrone soup is completely vegan.
Wow,
it has been for forever.
I say that, but what wine and why did you decide to private label? Obviously, it's a wine that you like, and you went to, because people that don't know about private labeling wine is, it's not that you grow the grapes.
No.
It's you prefer these particular grapes and wine, and then you go, is it a simple process to have your wine? Obviously, you have to pick it.
Well,
Choose.
the way I decide on a wine is what's going to be the most drinkable for our customers. My cousin Michael Jordan is a master sommelier.
The Michael Jordan.
Not the basketball player. He's short and blonde.
Surprise.
Okay.
He's short and blonde.
He's short and blonde, but he's not, tall. He's master sommelier. So when he knows wine beyond belief. He's fabulous. For me, it's about what our customers can sit down and drink, not spend a lot of money on, but get a very good, balanced wine that goes well with our meals.
Well, this Chardonnay is delicious.
Yeah, it's really good.
And I'm going to have the Merlot as well to go in there. We can pour that right. You can pour that right in here. I'm going to do that.
Sure. So what I like about the Merlot, so in 1985, when I first opened,
Thank you.
there was a Merlot. No one knew what Merlot was in 1985.
No.
It was relatively new. They didn't even know that there was a grape. And Dave Chapelet, who was from Chapelet Wines, bottled one of the first Merlots. And so I put it on my list because I love the flavor. I could not sell it to save my life. People came in, they wanted Chianti, or it wasn't even Chardonnay at that time. It was like the
Chablis?
Pouilly-Fuissé, you know. So
it wasn't
really,
Blue Nun back then, remember?
So
that?
Blanc, you know, and even not even Pinot Grigio. So for me, it's about drinking the wine, tasting it, and tasting different. This is all Central Coast, and really just loving the flavor profile that goes well with our.
And in your restaurant, what's the price range of your wine?
Gosh, I think it's $28 a bottle.
So it's great, and
we had them at 50% off during COVID, and to go they're $10 off. So if you buy a bottle of wine to go, it's $10 less.
It's a great way to. It's a great thing in the restaurant to have, because it's always a sure thing. I know when I go in, you can just, depending on what I'm eating, that I can get it. And the wine is a higher quality of wine. Sometimes people don't realize they're getting a much better bottle of wine in a private label wine that might be a $50 bottle, and they're getting it for $29 or $20. And so
it's amazing.
We really appreciate that you have. That's why I wanted to talk about your wines for when people go there.
We have those wines. This is our wine by the glasses. So if someone says, I want a glass of Merlot, Oscar Merlot, I believe it was $9. We might have just raised it to $10. I guarantee there's no place in this city you can get a glass of wine not for under $12.
Right.
No, it's $14 because it would be nicer if you want a Chardonnay. Maybe you can get a Pinot Grigio. You know, so and you have a private label, and we'll show some of the others as well. You have a Chianti, you have a mixed a blend, a red blend,
red blend,
and the Merlot,
and the Chardonnay.
And is your red blend the the strongest, the
I call it.
boldest?
I think it's a little. Yes, I would say the Big Night Red.
Big Night Red. I just watched Big Night last night.
Isn't that great?
I can't watch it enough.
It's great. I love
great.
that. I love
great.
it. It's a great movie. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's really the epitome of the American Italian versus the Italian. And my mother loved the Tucci brothers, so she just fell in love. And
Gosh, I haven't seen that movie in years.
We watched it
she had
again
to
last
make
night.
that. After that movie came out, she made the timpani. I said, Mom, nobody's going to buy it. She goes, I don't care. I'm making it.
That movie, the fact that they loved that movie, and it was just such an amazing movie. Now we're going to go into the movie of Big Night, but it took place on the Jersey Shore. Did your family history start ever
Hoboken, New Jersey.
So there we go. Back in
Monroe
the
Street.
And Hoboken was it's where all the Jews and good Jews and Italians went. So they had good bakeries and restaurants, but breaking into a Irish areas, that wasn't easy, and that's where Big Night comes in. You have to see the movie. If you haven't seen it, then
Now you know to see
My
it.
godmother's Irish, and her family came from Ireland, and my godfather's Italian. And when they got married, it was, we don't know if the Irish married the Italian. It was very, very funny. And they're both Catholics, so it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
But they've been married over, 65, 70 years. It was great.
Well, we'll drink to them.
Drink to them.
And then, so one of the
Drink,
major
cheers,
other
cheers,
questions about your restaurant. So here you have a restaurant, then you have 2 restaurants, then you have 8 restaurants.
Right.
And how is it? How do you handle your customers? How is life now in the restaurant? You can ask other questions. You have some other good questions. I saw this one, and I thought that was a really interesting one.
Because I know that you have you love people, and that's a big part of how you run your restaurants. So I thought you might want to share some of that with us.
Well, the first thing, I'm a Virgo. I'll start by that.
Me too.
So I am a list maker. And I like to be very organized about how process is very important to me. I think in a very processed way. So when I opened my first restaurant, one of the reasons why when I was working with my parents, my dad would write the order on the back of a number 8 bag,
Yes, a brown bag.
It was a brown bag, and he would write, a box of cheap forks, a box of cheap that was for the pizza slices, tins, pasta tins. He would write down what he needed the items for, and he would call the vendor, and they knew what he wanted. So when I started working for my parents, I called the vendor. I said, "This is it's 1980. I said, can you fax me over an item sheet, an item guide? And he's like, fax? They didn't have a fax machine. I said, well, I know they exist. So this is before spreadsheets, and I took a graph paper.
How did
graph
we exist?
paper,
Right.
with the lines, and I made all the item codes, and cheap forks equals item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And so that's how we did the pars. And my dad's like, yeah, it's the same. We get the same amount of stuff. I said, Dad, but it's better for me to know. So systems is very important. Getting back to when I opened my first restaurant, I wrote manuals for every position to make sure that everyone really understood what my expectations were. And I always say, and to this day, if you have clear, constant, consistent communication, then everything should run smoothly. Now, people can interpret that clear, constant, consistent communication differently or not follow the system. So it was very important that when I opened my first restaurant, I opened it as if I wasn't going to be there every day, so someone can pick it up. I always say, if someone came from Mars, they would know how to make a pizza. They might not make the best pizza, but they would understand how to make the pizza. They would know how to wash a dish. They would know how to use the dishwasher. So I did that with every step. And what was interesting about that...
And you wrote the manuals?
I wrote every single manual.
God.
And this is before word processing.
This is amazing.
This is typewriter. And first I did it by hand. And what this actually... It's almost as if it was meant to be that then, in 1988, I have a child who's developmentally delayed, and you need to break everything down into steps backwards. So everything I did for my restaurant prepared me to be a mother of a child with a disability, because I understood that you had to break things down. It's like if you're coaching baseball, you break everything down into the steps, and I was doing that for my staff, my team. And so I think that's helped.
That's another amazing thing you have accomplished in your life, your children, and let's talk a little bit about that and what I know restaurants, it's all good and this is what you do, but let's not gloss over. This is a very important.
3 kids.
Well, so I have bonus children. So Max
I
is
like
my
that she calls them bonus
I have
children.
my 2 bonus children who are 32 years old. They're amazing. My first marriage, I had Max was born in 1988. He passed away 3 days after his 12th birthday in 2000, and that's when I met Catherine. After that, I joined Shane's Inspiration and on the advisory board there. He was a complete inspiration to bringing me down to the level of not my expectations of everyone was always very high. Mm-hmm. I was not the most patient person on the planet. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot more about patience having a child with a disability. So Max was born in 1988, and then 5 years later, my son Nicholas was born. So I had a child that was on the 3 percentile and a child that was on the 98th percentile. So,
and you went into the community as an advocate for families with children with disabilities.
I did immediately. What I learned is that there are so many parents who didn't know how to get resources, and I want to ratchet it back a bit because we didn't think Max was developmentally delayed when he was born because he had good scores. But then around 3 months, like things weren't happening that were normal. His eyes were moving and he had nystagmus. And I thought, okay, something's not right here. So I take him to the pediatrician. He goes, well, go to this eye specialist. And then the eye specialist tells me he's blind and that was wrong. And he had some disease that the only way you can know about this Leber's congenital amaurosis is if you have the special test. So I said, So that was a Monday. I used to have my restaurants closed on a Monday. Mm-hmm. And my parents would come over on a Monday to hang with Max. And when I told my parents, they were very upset. We called my Uncle Mikey, who is the maitre d' of Mateo's restaurant. My Uncle Matty owned Mateo's restaurant, the hip place with the Rat Pack and every other celebrity. Right. And of course, he knew the head of Jewel Stein, and so I started making those appointments for Max to be tested. And every single appointment that I had to meet with a special doctor, they had a story about my parents or about my uncle. So Dr. Lippy, who was the head geneticist, when I called to make an appointment for her, they said, it's 6 months out. I said, well, will you tell her this is Madelyn from the Village Mart grocery store, right?
You had to use your clout.
My clout was the Village Mart grocery store. She called me right back. She goes, come on Monday. And she told me that when she graduated from medical school, her parents were on a budget, and my mom made the food as a gift for them. And she remembered, I had no idea that lasagna would get me dibs on a Monday with the top geneticist. So all through that, food and love really worked hand in hand. And I always say Marie's is about food and love. So getting involved in the community of parents with handicapped children or special needs, it depends. A lot of people call their children special needs. I'm calling seriously developmentally delayed, where they can't walk or talk. Or Max never talked, but we did teach him how to walk and sign language. And so then Nicholas became a peer role model. So he was at UCLA. Max was in the program, and Nicholas was a peer role model, where he learned to model age-appropriate behavior for the handicapped children. So they were mixed, and we started that very early.
Right, because peer, that was a hard
very
time.
Important. Yeah.
You didn't get that.
No.
People glossed over that.
That's right.
Peer
interaction.
Leveling the playing field with their peers so they can be together, so they're not so segregated.
And that's where your organization came in, where we did that with building playgrounds so kids could
playground
play together.
That's right, Shane's Inspiration, where the kids can play side by side because they weren't even doing that, and it's a basic.
And now Shane's has built over 70 playgrounds.
We have, I think, 78 playgrounds
78
in
internationally, and the in-school programs are incredible. What they're teaching in schools to kids about being inclusive and
now it's teaching to the peer. So talk about peer to peer. It's where when it was there for you, but you really had to go search and find it. And
so I was able to do fun stuff. So look, people say, how did you, I was opening my second restaurant in 1988 in Woodland Hills when Max was diagnosed. And my then ex-husband, my now ex-husband, my then husband, said I would have to sell my restaurants. And I said, no, I don't think so. I can do this, and I can make sure that Max will get all the care he can. And he truly was my inspiration to keep going, as well as when someone says you can't do something, it makes me want to do it even more, like a typical woman, right?
This is the wonderful gift that a woman has.
Yes. Well, we have so much more to talk to you about, but this is going to have to wrap up part 1 with you. So let's toast to everything that we've been able to discuss so far, and to you,
to Max,
and to Max,
and
to Shane,
and to Shane,
and to Shane, and please tune in to our next episode where we'll have so much more with Madelyn Alfano.
And we're going to have some desserts as well.
See you next time.
1016 Entertainment.